you said that sleep started to resonate with you because you were learning more about brain health. So I think maybe we sort of dive into that. So what is actually going on in the body when we sleep that's affecting our health in this powerful way?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that's happening that I found really interesting. And I think I mentioned to you before we started the episode, full disclosure that I'm not a doctor or scientist. So I like to try to um, describe things like how I learned it and, understand how, the everyday person may follow
Perfect.
along. So hopefully it will make sense. But during the first thing is during sleep, our body is working to repair itself. And especially with the brain is cleansing itself when we sleep. So we want to make sure that we're giving the our body enough time to actually perform this. And when we sleep, our what we learned like during the day, our memories are getting cemented in our mind as well. So when we don't get enough sleep and the body doesn't have the time to repair itself and the brain to cleanse itself, that's when you're going to be more likely to find that you are maybe feeling confused, lack of judgment, forgetfulness, um, you know, things like that, brain fog, right? We've all experienced. So all that will happen when we don't give ourselves enough sleep at night. So
Okay.
that's that's one of the things that the body's doing. Um, Second is, and so we'll get into a little scientific here, but so T cells, which are white blood cells that help us fight infections. So when we don't get enough sleep, our T cell count goes down. And so that's when you're going to find that you're more susceptible to getting sick, getting different viruses, and also inflammation in the body goes up, which again makes you more likely to get something that you don't want to get. So that's happening. And then lastly, the other thing that I found really interesting was our hormones. So our body regulates our hormone production when we are asleep. So again, if we're not getting enough sleep, and this cannot happen, fully happen, this is when you might find it hard to regulate your emotions. Uh,
Mm.
you may have heightened stress, right? Lower mood, and also like a higher risk of feeling depressed as well. So kind of these three things together kind of shows that you need to give your body enough time uh, each night to do its thing, or else you're going that's why when you don't, you wake up the next day, you know feeling forgetful and moody and all of that.
Right.
So
Yeah. Okay, so I all of those are really helpful. And it's interesting because I'm kind of thinking of like little stories about each of these. So the whole brain cleansing idea, I had always heard that, let's say you're studying for a test or something like that, and what should you do? Should you just stop at some point and say, I know enough, I got to get my sleep? Or should you keep studying? And I'd always heard you need to just stop. Like, you know what, get your sleep. And so this goes with what you're saying.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, because you need to give your brain enough time to actually absorb the information that you just studied. Yes.
Yeah. And there's a cartoon movie that I can't think of the name of right now, unfortunately, where it's all these little characters that live inside a little girl's brain. And I
Okay.
always picture them like cataloging things into folders and putting things into different places and stuff. So, listeners, if you know what that movie is, tell me in some way because I can't think of the name of it. But anyway, now that's what I'm going to picture.
Yes.
And then when I learned more about gut health recently, because I had an episode about gut health, and that was a pretty fascinating discussion, we were talking about inflammation. And so you brought up that if we are not sleeping and these T cell levels are getting lower, then potentially there's inflammation going on inside our bodies as well. And what she was talking about was that chronic inflammation, just the body's just always angry in a sense. And she was talking about how harmful that is to our overall health. So it sounds to me like those things go together because if we can get enough sleep, maybe we can prevent some of that too.
Yes. And I love that you had that episode too, because actually, as I said, lifelong learner over here, I just enrolled in a gut health course because there is a huge gut brain connection. So I wanted to be able to increase my knowledge about the gut because it is so important for the brain health as well. So,
Yes. And you know what? Isn't that interesting? Because she and I were focusing a lot on what people eat and tweaks we could make and why do we care. And she alluded to the gut brain connection and talked about it a little bit, but we said, oh, we're going to have to come back to that more. So we're kind of doing that now, maybe.
yes, exactly. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm convinced I want to fight infection. I want lower inflammation. I want to remember what I learned. I want my hormones regulated. Those are all really important things. Now, I'm just curious, does it matter how much time we spend in different parts of the sleep cycle, or is it just the overall sleep that will help our body do all these things?
Yeah. There's definitely recommended like percentages within each of the sleep stages. I know I have a Fitbit. There's so many other devices out there like that will give you a rough estimate. You have to take it for what they are. It's not going to give you 100%. But the interesting thing is, right, we hear about how we need 8 hours, right? We hear 7 to 8 hours. And for the most part, that is true. And if you get that, you're probably more more than likely getting enough time in each stage. Um, but for our deep sleep, a lot of that happens at the beginning of the sleep cycle. So, for example, say you had a really bad night and you only sleep 4 hours instead of 8. You're not technically losing out on 50% of the benefits of sleep. It's not exactly linear because, especially like the first hour or so, tends to be the most restful. So you're still getting, some of the good benefits, even if you don't get the full 8 hours. So even though we want to strive for the
Right.
7 to 8 hours, know that it's not exactly linear, and quantity doesn't always equal quality as well,
Yeah.
right? So I like to say, aim for the 7 to 8, but again, kind of know yourself and kind of experiment, right, in seeing, oh, if you got 8 hours one night, how am I feeling, how am I functioning? If you got 6 hours, kind of ask the same thing, and see how you do, because you
Right.
need something that's going to work for you and your lifestyle too.
So that brings up a question, and I am aware that this would be just your opinion that I'm asking for. So, listeners, I'm sure are aware of that too. But, some people say, oh, I only need 4 hours, I only need 5 hours, and I'm functioning great. Is that likely true or probably not?
Based on my studies, I would say probably not. There is a very small percent of people, it's actually genetic, that it's called like, they could be like short sleepers. It's something like that. But with them, they can have a few hours less a night and perform a little bit better than the normal person. But they're still not functioning like at their best, right? So they may be a little less moody or forgetful, but not, 100%. So, yeah, I would say if people say all they need is 4 hours a night, I don't know. I'd maybe question that, but again, I know
Maybe they would be functioning better if they had more.
exactly.
Yeah. I don't know that many people who claim that, but you hear that sometimes. So I was curious for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that also reminds me of, again, when you're looking at how much sleep that you need, for yourself, mindset plays a big role, right? So if you're someone that is saying that, oh, I only need 4 hours, or in the past, and I'll admit I was guilty of this, early on in my career, working a lot, and I was like, oh, I don't need sleep, there's too much to do, I'll, kind of like I'll sleep when I'm dead type of mentality, right? Then you're not gonna make sleep a priority, right? If you're not thinking it's important, you're not going to be making sure that you're getting your 8 hours a night. So, also checking in with your thoughts and beliefs around sleep as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know what? I'm glad you said that because I'm always talking about mindset on this podcast because I do fully believe it. I mean, goodness, our mindset is running everything in our lives, every thought we have, every decision we make. So I'm glad that you bring that up. Yeah. Yeah. I have definitely heard people say, I'll sleep when I'm dead, whatever. And no, that's not ideal.
Yes. Yeah, no, it is common. And like I said, my younger self was definitely, had that mentality. But as I have learned, like, no, we need our sleep. And then, as we've
Yeah.
already talked about already, the importance of it. So